Do they have like a weekend or a week that you don't want to go on the weekends? Well, as long as you go leave the Saturday night, obviously.
Yes. No.
I found it here. This was inside the studio. I had to click go live here because this was saying connect your software, and then when it was connected, I hit. Because I saw this when I first logged in, and then it immediately went away. I figured you might have turned it off, but now it's working.
So I just did this one. Can you see it now?
You just move the camera?
Yes.
So it's live. Yeah.
So you just had to do it over there?
Yeah, this says it's in stream now, but it said go live. So I guess you have to do both that and this.
Because I set it up over there.
You set it up on YouTube.
Yes.
You had to tell YouTube that you were live.
That is good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I set it up here, then I just can I can make it go live here. But if I set it up here, then I can.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't done it. The other one. Okay.
Well, this is great.
Yeah, so,
Well, thank you for doing it. I'm really glad that I made it today. I know that you're.
no, it's good. I learned something too. So make sure that stays live, and then when it's done, you just hit in stream.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, potentially.
It'll end up here, but then I can just turn it on on my computer.
Oh yeah, you can go to YouTube and go to the YouTube studio.
And then I'll go there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that, Steve.
Yeah,
I'll
no
just
problem.
set it up on my computer in here.
Okay.
And I'll do it there.
Okay.
And then that way you can.
Oh, sounds
I
good.
am so sorry.
No,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we got it.
Yes, thank you so
Everything
much.
else goes wrong.
Would you mind just looking at it for the first couple of minutes over in your office, and then you can. Steve,
How are you, man? How you doing?
You are a miracle worker. Thank you so much for just flying by the seat of our pants. What is it? You're out tomorrow, right? Nate, do you need something?
Yes. Oh, so your name is Steve.
That's one of his big apple chips and those type of
If you want to get paid.
The rest
That's a good thing.
I'm still in my house.
Is that from Franklin?
Campbell County. Still get to sleep in bed with my wife. Everything's good there. So must not have caused any harm in that area.
Well, you may have, but she may not be, she may just be flat.
She did inform me the other day that she's going to Florida to meet her girlfriends.
You don't mind if I pull this? No, okay, thanks.
Good luck.
No, not at all. I just probably can't sneak in there without it.
Last year, I was replacing
She's never went for a week. She runs her own business.
stall ball.
And she's going to go like Thursday.
I'm just, yeah, because he lives on the west coast now. I'm a homebody, so I'm over there 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. Some of the boys kind of
Close to the end.
he was
I usually get like early 50s, late 40s. It's family gene. My dad was like that.
today, you know, you had a slow day, it'd be a nice day to start one of those projects.
No, but
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh,
gave us a great
well, she's a interest rate, driving all that stuff.
Halloween, and she's gonna give us
Like it or not, I'm not really excited about the infrastructure, we bought a farm.
grandbaby. My wife watches.
That's,
One day
yes, where's the one? Out near Bridgeport.
they're having,
That's my mom and dad's house.
they know what they're having.
Yeah, no, we played.
My wife doesn't want to know. So
Everything goes from.
she wouldn't allow them to tell me because she figured I would spill beans.
Right now, building houses are still
My
at.
son telling me,
Something like that.
basically on his golf club.
Now, I need to look into the farm
He just
credit.
ran some, so he told me to.
They do on farms.
So I didn't have that.
Yeah, and I don't know what the max is. They only put in 250,000. Some a couple of years ago.
This is just a nightmare waiting to happen. I swear now I'm gonna probably die.
And of course, they don't get all.
So you like offering to help with something and like not all of this over to our
Just probably for sure.
That's right.
Are you behind the cupcakes in the other window?
Yes, well, Amy, yeah, Amy. They're so cute.
Yeah, we've always had beef cattle. And,
2 pounds.
we never quite
That
connected
was,
up.
no one knew.
That would be a great time. Well, we sold
47,
the
that was 47 years ago.
vast majority of our herd.
That was rare then.
Yeah, right. What Dad had his hip replaced.
Right.
I had 3 building projects. And we were
Sales.
Are you come out
and the landowner
or something? Between 2 ends.
decided to add on farm. And we've been there for 15 years, kept it up nice, and now it's just all.
So they got the lab test.
We're kind of finally down there.
You know why the,
I wish you would have told me before I replaced
you know, like the House of Missouri type people, you know? Pioneers. You know why pioneers get so many?
And that's one of the things with these farms, you gotta kind of be careful with how nice it is.
Got 7, whoops, still got 6. Jimmy gotta pick up his chores, go.
No, you want them to feel named or maybe preserved.
I don't think comedians did.
Yeah, it's probably a blessing in disguise. I was able to finish the renovation.
Got the big fireworks display coming up this weekend.
Winding up.
In the summer,
We got one building
call
on
it
the
the WEBN.
right next door to
Fireworks, it's
us.
sponsored by the radio station.
We bought this, it was taken in.
Sunday night on the
We
river.
didn't really have any desire to store property, so we fixed it up. I didn't do tax credits on this one, I just did all out of pocket. And, it turned out really nice.
Get his body next week. I was hoping
Just
just
painted it green.
What they can do, what they can do,
It's got a nice studio downstairs that I made. And all this plumbing, electric, put all 4-inch white oak hardwood doors in it. Everything's been sliding. Matter of how urgent.
Star on it.
You gotta make sure I take it down to the first floor, block it, and I face it. Make sure it goes down. It's got all high-end, Bosch mini splits. My utility bill on that building.
I won't like keep you long. You know what, I'll just email you because it sounds like you're in transit. Well, I wanted to ask you.
One resident that you
Okay. Well, we have just learned from TLG that a bunch of the folks are coming down from
So downstairs, I got conditioning because we can do that. It was a real estate. So it kind of lends itself to that. It's got a back room, it's got a bedroom, it's got a place in front of the house. My chair.
Next weekend.
I ran off on the went out to have our final inspection.
Hey, so many people.
We're selling a house down on St. Clair.
Actually, I can get me come up with a shirt. I just slip over there and get Holly Jolly channel. My wife throws up. She hates it.
I bought a building out there.
She won't listen to it until after Thanksgiving. Sometimes she holds herself off for like 3 days
The day after Halloween, it's like
Tax credits on that one. Gets old for 3 years. And they you have to get over. We're now beyond the threshold. We bought the farm. Trying to exchange. But on anything like that. Like I said, it's hard to give the justice.
There's a lot of scary monsters in the people.
Yeah, we're supposed to be 2.5% interest rate on where they're at.
I mean, in theory, but not even.
Let's get a little.
Live down there.
Just when you about get to the big day, it's like.
Owensboro and Northern Kentucky. But also, it's not, the partners we use are in rural, largely eastern Kentucky. So I don't actually think we have the right data set to compare to, do you know what I mean? Oh, that's the shape, your area is probably.
And I just wanted to make sure if anyone else.
I'm not sure how things like that are like, but up in where we grew up, they called it something from our parents, right? Our parents grew up, something about cabbages, houses and stuff like that. So cabbage, so that's what you do to cabbage. If you really look at that, they couldn't afford to get they got broken. That's what we do. But I said that to somebody once when I was like out in Vegas. I just assumed that everybody in the world had kids. Well, they don't throw anything in goodness now. They just do the.
Oh, they just do the selfie.
Well, that was when I was a kid. I don't know if they do anything now.
Is this any time of the year?
No, it's just the night before Halloween.
Oh, the night before Halloween.
Night before Halloween was cabbage night.
Okay.
That's when pumpkins roll in the street. There were a lot of pumpkin smashes going on. And nobody called the clown. Twisted up. It's not an issue.
So we do have section 2. I finally just called Billy because we were emailing back and forth, and she said, you guys have to, it's about 22 actually. It hasn't been submitted to HUD yet, but I went to see. Yeah, I've called Pam, asked Curtis about, he booked so many webinars, we don't know how it's really available or not, so I'm trying to figure out when we know we are available to offer some options.
We're kind of facing one right now.
We're supposed to get an email today with the agenda.
I'm not essential in terms of our meeting, but I'm out so detailed because
See if I move my computer.
I thought you remember that.
I'm looking at, we'll just do closer back to back to our October dates.
Did it have a dual phone?
Well, then maybe, now that I'm on, yeah, now that it's live, then I should be able to here. So, okay, so you get out of YouTube, and I'll get out of YouTube, and then see if you can still see it. Like, get out of okay. And you're not in the administrator portal, right? Okay, perfect. Well, then go
And we have another breakout session. Yeah. So we have to keep our fingers off I was never
So you know what you do? Okay, this is the world's smallest violin. She just puts the, and I guess they push a button on it and it plays it. I said, I need to go get one of them. My music, it's not there. That's
That was the old man. The old man.
Later in the evening.
And so young, Julie, come He's a great guy. I can tell you some stories. There you go. His father was invested.
I'm sorry.
Maybe coach him.
Heads above water. I'll take it. Well, you were. They're keys that I found in my house.
Do you know what they're for? Narnia, the back of the cupboard to Narnia?
1933, so there's a lot of odd keys around. I mean, we still live in the house, but yeah, we didn't take this. One of our kids moved into all four of us were chairs. One of the there's so many.
They're all good.
So it was time. We're not satisfied. She wasn't making it.
All right, folks, well, we're going to get started. Hope everybody had a good lunch. If you didn't get anything to eat, there's plenty of food in there, and I want to thank the staff for providing a nice lunch. So, Sam, can you give me a confirmation of the quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum and the press has been notified.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think everyone's had an opportunity to look over the minutes. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Any additions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion that they be approved.
Motion.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Sam, you want to introduce Terry for us?
Sure. So I'm pleased to introduce Terry Helton, who is our new Managing Director of Multifamily Programs. Terry has been with the corporation for 20 years now, and with the multifamily department for 7 of those last years, and we are really excited that she's agreed to step into this role, and we're happy to have her. So she will be presenting the items from the multifamily department for the board today.
Thank you, and I just want to say thank you all for your patience today as I go through these agenda items with you. All right, so the first item on the agenda is an inducement resolution. It is a revision for Winterwood Portfolio 3. This is Winterwood Portfolio 3 received an inducement resolution on May 26, 2022 in the amount of $12 million. Since that time, the project has run into increased construction costs due to demand of materials and inflation. The developer requested an additional $1.5 million in bond authority via KHC's waiver process, and the approval was granted on August 15th. KHC staff is therefore requesting board approval of the new inducement resolution to reflect a new total bonding authority of $13,500,000. This project involves the acquisition and rehab of 6 existing apartment complexes located at scattered sites throughout Kentucky for a total of 221 units. The project will serve 15 households at or below 50% AMI and 206 households at or below 60% AMI. The 221 units will consist of 118 one-bedroom units, 80 two-bedroom units, and 23 three-bedroom units. The development team is listed on the agenda item for your review. KHC staff has reviewed the preliminary submittals of the applicant and recommends approval by the board for an inducement resolution authorizing the taxes and financing of the Winterwood project, Portfolio 3 project. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that this be adopted. So moved. Okay, have a motion, do I have a second? Do I have a second? So, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries, all right? Terry, you want to talk about next one, please?
The next agenda item is Lee's Lane. Lee's Lane project received an inducement resolution on December 9, 2025, in the amount not to exceed $38 million. Since that time, the project has run into increased construction costs due to mainly increased construction interest costs from increasing interest rates. On August 15th, the developer requested an additional $2.5 million in bond authority via our waiver process. KHC staff is therefore requesting board approval of the new inducement resolution to reflect the total bond authority of $40,500,000. The project involves acquisition and new construction of 312 units located at 3500 Lee's Lane in Louisville, Kentucky. The project will serve 312 family households at or below 60% of area median income. The 312 units will consist of 36 one-bedroom units, 168 two-bedroom units, and 108 three-bedroom units. Again, the developer team is listed on your agenda item. KHC staff has reviewed the preliminary submittals of the applicant and recommends approval of the board of directors of an inducement resolution authorizing the taxes and bond financing of the Lee's Lane project.
Do you members have any questions of Terry on this project? If not, I'll entertain a motion that it be approved.
I'll make a motion.
Already have a motion. I'll second. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Terry, so you want to talk about Davis Park?
All right. This is the final resolution for Davis Park Station Phase 2. Davis Park Station Phase 2 is granted an inducement resolution on February 23rd, 2023 for the bonding authority in the amount of $9 million. This is the final resolution also for $9 million. The project received a TAFRA hearing on July 17th, 2023 and presented to the State Property and Building Commission as well as the capital projects and bond oversight committees. The project involves new construction of 73 units located at 757 Giroux Street in Lexington. The project will serve families at or below 60% AMI. It consists of 25 one-bedroom units, 36 two-bedroom units, 12 three-bedroom units. The development team is as follows. KHG staff recommends approval by the Board of Directors for this final resolution and the issuance of bonds for Davis Park Station Phase 2.
Any members have any questions of Terry on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion that it be approved. Do I have a motion, second? Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Terry, you have a personal service contract?
Yes. This is an authorization to enter into a personal service contract with Nova Gradick and Company for consulting services. We put out an RFP earlier this year, back in July, for consulting services to look at our qualified allocation plan to make sure that we are doing everything that we need to do to review, and also to review those documents, participate in public forums, as well as just kind of an overall review of our QAP for the next 2 years. We did have 2 consultants to apply in that RFP. We had Nova Gradick, and then we had Hargrove Consulting. KHC staff does recommend Nova Gradick Consulting to fulfill this contract in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Yes, Kevin.
Since I represent the nonprofit housing developer, and the QAP is very important, I couldn't tell from the scope of work if it included talking with developers before the QAP is written, or only after.
No, we plan on having some public forums with the developers to get their insights, maybe some inputs. I believe that's the process way will work. And so we will have those developer forums prior to anything being finalized.
Okay, I just couldn't, I mean, because the scope of work is so broad,
Sure.
Of necessity, I couldn't tell the course of events. So
Thank you.
Any other members have any questions? I couldn't help but notice that the consultants from Dover, Ohio, and I've been there many times. I was telling Winston that it's right in the heart of Amish country. Beautiful, beautiful area. If anybody ever has an opportunity, be sure and go there. So if there are no further questions, I entertain a motion that this be approved. There's a motion from Henry, and a second by Bruce. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Wendy Smith, Wendy, you have a couple personal service contracts.
I do. Before I get into the details of those, Winston asked that I give you all just a brief update of where we are with disaster recovery efforts. Particularly, well, it'll be for East and West, but most of our work is going to be in East Kentucky. So I'll give you all this broad overview. So before the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, the CDBG-DR funds, are available for East Kentucky, and while those funds are also, it's so complicated, there is an allocation for West Kentucky, $130 million, an allocation for East Kentucky, $300 million. Not all of that's housing, but a good portion of each of those will be housing, but also infrastructure, economic development. Those funds flow through the Department for Local Government. But there's a lot of process and planning that HUD requires before you can ever get those dollars to flow. DLG has done that process for the 21 disaster, meaning the tornadoes in West Kentucky, and the 21 flooding in East Kentucky. So DLG has grant applications out, is accepting applications, and is offering funding related to the 21 disasters. But for the 22, we're still, DLG is finalizing the action plan, and we'll soon put that out for public comment and submit it to HUD. So before those funds, particularly for East Kentucky, are available, and while West Kentucky still needs dollars, and especially flexible dollars, before that, we have ramped up the Rural Housing Trust Fund, RHTF. So that legislation was passed at the end of March of this year. It was a kind of a reprogramming of state allocated disaster dollars for East and West Kentucky into a new rural housing trust fund. So that trust fund never existed before, and the funds were reprogrammed and put in there. So 20 million, 10 for East Kentucky, 10 for West Kentucky. So again, legislation passed in March. We drafted program guidelines and all that kind of stuff, and pulled together per your nominations on June 13th, the first meeting of the Rural Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee. So the legislation prescribes kind of the makeup of that committee, and we pulled them together, shared with them kind of our plan, our draft program guidelines, and got their input on a number of things. You all, in the world of public policy, that's lightning fast, right? To have legislation passed in March, pull your committee together and meet in June, and tomorrow is the day the first round of applications are due. Our aim was to have this be bridge money between the FEMA money and the immediate disaster recovery and the longer term DLG, CDBG-DR disaster recovery money. That's a lot of money for a long time. 20 million isn't a ton, but it's a lot to keep work going, and it's very, very flexible. It is so flexible, we're going to be able to serve folks up to 120% of area median income. Most of our programs, the max is 80% of area median income, and typically it's 60% is really who we can serve. So this gives us a lot more room, because the disaster didn't care if you were moderate or low income, right? It didn't care, and folks are going to need a lot of help, and it's very flexible funding. Because it's state level and not federal, it doesn't have the same, I call it the federal brick that's tied to every federal dollar. You know, all of the hoops that you have to jump through to use federal dollars don't apply to Rural Housing Trust Fund. We're still going to inspect units, we're still going to make sure stuff is affordable, but we don't have to do as many of the regulatory items.
And area median income in some of these areas is so very
Exactly.
low, 120%.
Well, and there's one, I'm so glad you brought that up. We also said, if your area median income in your county, so let's say Perry County, is lower than state median income, you can use the state median income.
Oh.
So it's even going to be more wiggle room. And that was our partners in East Kentucky who asked for that. But it'll apply to West Kentucky too. And it can be used to develop new housing, so new home ownership, new rental, but can also be used to repair a disaster survivor's home. For homeowners. So if their home was damaged, we can fix it up. We can also rebuild it. We can also build new homes. Very flexible. We really listened to our partners across the state when it came to designing that. So I mainly just wanted to let you all know that that is underway, and again, applications close for the first round tomorrow. And what we wanted was, we know we have partners with land already acquired, like they're ready to go on repairing houses. They've got wait lists. They're already using some of our regular dollars to build houses. They need more so they can just keep their pipeline going. Many of them have doubled their carpentry crews. They are just trying to meet the need, and they need to know they've got a pipeline of money. The other thing we're doing with this that is very different is we're making large commitments up front. So the max commitment will be $2.5 million per applicant. That's more than that's more than some funding rounds we've had for single family development or home repair. So they'll have a good chunk, and they know they can just go. And we will do 100% financing of the project, but then once a mortgage, or if they had FEMA money or something else, then that will get kind of paid back and recycled into the next house. Some will stay in, but not all. Anyway, it's just really exciting. Our partners are really appreciative that it's coming, and that it's coming fast.
Wendy, just let me say thank you and your staff and all the staff at KHC for all the work you've done for both Western and Eastern Kentucky. And you all have done phenomenal work in assisting the governor's office and everyone else in providing those folks some relief. And that they were really hit hard, both Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky. So we appreciate it. The staff, you all have any questions of the staff and Wendy in regard to those?
Now I'll get into why I'm bringing you these two personal service contracts, because our harder work is ahead of DLG and KHC for sure. As I mentioned, for the 22 flooding in East Kentucky, which was devastating, and I've heard many consultants say it might be one of the hardest post-disaster recovery efforts ever. In part because of the topography, because there was already kind of a failing housing markets in pockets of East Kentucky already, and just the challenges of getting builders and capacity there. DLG is working on this overall plan to submit to HUD for disaster recovery in East Kentucky. KHC, in partnership, wrote the housing section. So not economic development, not buyouts, not infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. But the housing section we did. And our aim is to take a two-pronged approach in East Kentucky, whereby we would be kind of the lead administrator as a grantee of DLG. So DLG would grant funds to us, and then we would work in East Kentucky. We cannot do this alone. So we put out two competitive RFPs earlier this year, scored them, had a selection committee and all of that, and have selected a disaster recovery consultant, just because we've got to make sure we are designing stuff from the beginning to make sure it's compliant. We also are going to need things like, we're going to have to probably stand up a construction inspection team on site in East Kentucky. And we're going to have them trained and QC'd and have their work, reviewed. And my design and construction review team is already incredibly busy. So we may have this consultant do that, train these folks and do QA on them and monitor their work and make sure everything's going right. They're going to help us design our system of record to make sure we are having every reportable field, just all that kind of stuff. So one of the personal service contracts that I'm bringing to you is with St. Bernard Project, SBP. I'm not going to ask for your approval on that until I talk about the other one, because they go in tandem. The other RFP that we put out was for a regional implementation agency, effectively a partner on the ground in East Kentucky to do outreach, intake, eligibility, collect documents, basically some case management with folks as something happens with their house where we realize we're not going to be able to fix your house. You're going to have to move to a new house in a new location, or we're going to have to build you a house up the hill, whatever, just lots of stuff. We don't have enough people, and we're not in East Kentucky. We need a partner. So we did a competitive process to select a regional implementation agency. We selected FAHI, which is also known as the Federation of Appalachian Housing Enterprises. They are a longtime partner of ours. They are a membership-based organization, so a lot of the entities that are already rebuilding with Team Kentucky funds and other dollars are members of FAHI. FAHI also does loan servicing, they do consulting, they just have a very robust kind of book of business and experience, and we trust them, which I can't tell you how much that means to me. And so what we're going to do with flood survivors, they will work with their long-term recovery group, community action agency, what have you, to get their paperwork into FAHI. FAHI staff will make sure they're eligible, will schedule a time for, it's probably going to happen this way, for KHC's construction staff to go out to the house and do an evaluation and do an estimated cost of benefits, document the damage, so that we're verifying this scope makes sense. And then FAHI is going to competitively engage contractors and then figure out who's the contractor we're going to send out to either do a repair or rebuild, what have you. They're going to manage documentation. We will inspect during the process. So it's going to be very complex. So there's going to be this kind of triad of us working really closely with the consultant, FAHI, and KHC staff to make sure we want to build a machine that will crank and just really get house after house repaired for flood survivors. We will also be doing funding rounds for the building of new houses, where flood survivors get a preference to buy, but it's not just for flood survivors. Because we don't, I'm not against a community that's just flood survivors, but really a healthy community is just going to serve, a bunch of different kinds of folks. So it could be flood survivors, they get first preference and get down payment assistance and stuff, but other folks would have the opportunity to buy some of the new houses as well. That's a lot. So that is why we did these two competitive processes simultaneously, scored them, and we selected SBP and then also FAHI. And what you all are looking at is only a phase 1 contract with each of them, whereby the three of us plan in detail, how is this going to work? What is our system of record going to be to keep all of the documentation? Who does what? How does the money flow? What's the timing? All that kind of stuff. And the final deliverable for this contract is that we negotiate the next contract with each of them for a long-term relationship. Fahi in particular is going to be a very complex contract because that's going to be really detailed, intricate work. SBP, it's still probably going to be some training and TA and consulting, but still our deliverable at the end of phase one with each of them is to negotiate that more detailed lockdown contract for the duration of the CDBG-DR grant.
Yeah, with Fahi, who I also agree is trustworthy and great, but to make sure if in the future these kinds of contracts come up, what is the conflict of interest? If they're members, if Fahi itself awards things to construction teams that they use themselves, are we setting, I'm looking at Sam, sorry.
That's a good, yeah.
But I'm looking at you.
Yeah, so they're going to do a competitive process where they ask for qualifications. They do expect their members to respond to that,
Yeah.
basically to get qualified, but they also expect other contractors to do that too.
And it's not that I'm worried about Fahi, I just want to set it up so that should this ever come up again with a less trustworthy.
Oh, sure.
That we already
Yeah.
get to say, oh no, we've had this kind of
Right.
stuff in
Right.
forever.
There has to be a way for the contractors to kind of get qualified.
Okay.
And to say, I'm interested in doing new builds, but not repairs, or
Okay.
repairs and not this, you know? So they can kind of say where they want to work, what scopes they're interested in, and then what we have to figure out, and we haven't done it yet, is how do things get assigned? Is it rotating, is it lottery, like, we have to figure that out.
All right.
Any other members have any questions of Wendy on these contracts? So, Wendy, I think we need to do each one separately. So.
Fair enough, Mike.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so beginning on, oh, go ahead, yeah.
If I may first, ask that the record reflect that DLG recused from items 7 and 8 due to the DLG being the state DR grantee.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Thank you, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Understand.
So the first item, it begins on page 39, but what I'm asking is for the board to approve a contract that will not exceed $200,000 with St. Bernard Project for consulting services for Eastern Kentucky CDBG-DR housing.
Anyone have any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve
Could
this.
you put it, actually, the consulting work are they going to be doing specifically?
Sure, they're going to do, I'm going to look at the scope of work, Barry, just to tell you. They're going to, overall, they're really going to help us make sure we're compliant. Everything we design, every program guideline, all of that, our system of record, that it's all aimed at compliance. That's our big end goal. But then also, I mean, similarly, program success. So what are the ways we can use the flexibilities or, you know, things that other states have done to be more innovative, to move more quickly, you know, so that we make this recovery happen as fast and efficiently as possible. But then more detailed, Barry, they're going to help us with the program design and the specific guidelines. So if it's homeowner repair, we've got to write guidelines for everything, right? HUD wants everything documented. We've got to have processes and procedures, who does what when, what's the flow of work and roles and responsibilities, how do we build that system of record, and then again, negotiating the phase 2 contract is the final deliverable.
I just want to make sure that they were in their scope of work, because I'm
Yes.
familiar with St. Bernard Project, and they're primarily deal with organizations or situations like this. They're built in for disaster relief and recovery and things like that. So,
Yeah, they started it right next to New Orleans.
well, technically,
Yeah.
these people are from Connecticut, I think. So.
Well, ours are from North Carolina and West Virginia, most of the folks we have interacted with, but yeah.
Any further questions? All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, and we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay?
Okay, the second personal service contract, again, is with Fahi Inc. Out of Berea, Kentucky, to be our regional implementation agency. Again, this is just the phase 1 contract, and it is for $200,000. And the scope of work is in the back of that. I'm happy to review it if anybody wants. It's very similar to SBP's, but on their side, they've got to help us design everything and figure out their staffing, as well as their process for selecting, for qualifying and selecting contractors.
Do I have any questions for Wendy? If not, I'll entertain a motion, we adopt this personal service contract. All right, have a motion from Holly, second. Have had a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all you do. Okay, so moving right along, John Davidson is going to give us a corporate planning update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm John Davidson, Deputy Executive Director of Business Services. And I want to frame the next 3 agenda items up for you. They're all informational. I'm going to start by talking about our corporate strategies. And every August, we come back to the board and give an update about how we're doing on the goals we set out to achieve at the beginning of the fiscal year. Kendrick Vonderschmidt's going to talk a little bit next about the allocation of actual units that we have put in and put out for the Commonwealth of Kentucky and households we've served. And then Tracy Thurston's going to give a financial update about how the fiscal year ended. So these are all for last fiscal year, and these are all informational, and at any time, feel free to ask me any questions as we go through here. But I'll remind everyone of our corporate strategies. They were to provide holistic housing solutions and make sure that we are able to respond to financial risks, be flexible to that, and also sustain and advance our core competencies. So a couple of things that I want to highlight for each of those areas. 875 loans per employee in our loan servicing area. That is measured against a goal of 800. We have approximately 28,000 loans, first mortgages. Secondly, 468 million first mortgages and mortgage production. That is 2,813 first mortgages that we all know, and you'll hear about this a little bit later from Tracy. The production numbers and the challenges I think that we've all heard about and seen due to interest rates and several other things. So we almost met that $500 million or $500 million goal there, just a little bit shy of that. Our secondary market gains, $8.4 million against a goal of $9 million. You'll also hear from Tracy a little bit later too. You know, we have definitely changed the way we're being flexible and responding to that risk with the bond issuance and some different things like that, because those secondary market gains are not what they once were. $601,000 in inspection fee for our MORs, which is part of our PDCA program. That is a moneymaker for us. Typically, we administer a contract for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and we have about 23,000 project-based units, and we do inspections, but also we get a fee for that, and that certainly is above and beyond and helps us support our missional costs. We served over 6,400 households through our homeless programs. That's on our ESG, our HOPWA, our Home TVRA, and our CRC programs. I always like to highlight this. Those aren't just, those aren't numbers. Those are real people that actually get housing and are being served through our homeless programs. Real people and households. We've created over 2,000 or preserved 2,000 tax-exempt bonds. That was on a goal of 1,500, so we exceeded that. I'll remind everyone that's a cyclical sort of program, so it hits every year. We make awards and through our multifamily area, which Terry talked about a little earlier. Also, 700 created or preserved tax credit units. That was on a goal of 700. We actually did 712. So that's pretty straightforward, and we really sort of measure that and know what we're wanting to achieve there. That is sort of the financial and the programmatic pieces. I'll also focus a little more on that last strategy of sustaining and advancing our core competencies. So really, that's the area I oversee in business services. We're supporting the mission of the corporation. So in the back, Molly Tate and her team have done a great job telling the story of Kentucky Housing Corporation. We go out to the folks that we actually serve and highlight success stories. We have a blog, a podcast. I think hopefully you all are aware of that and have listened or read some of that. If you haven't, see Molly in the back. A couple of other things in our employee services area, our KHC minority representation, this number continues to go up. And I've continuously talked about why that is every quarter, but we're right at 18%, 17.82% to be exact. And so just for everyone's sort of edification, we're responsible and required for our EEO reporting to submit this every quarter. Our goal is 12.2%. So we are literally almost 6% over that. And we're doing a really good job on that. And a couple of conversations that I've had with a few of you individually, you might ask why that is. We've talked about the pandemic and some of the barriers that were maybe changed and removed for the massive amount, almost 120, 130 individuals that we brought on and to help us administer all those COVID relief dollars. We're continuing that effort by making sure that all qualified candidates get a fair shake at the application that apply, get a fair shake at an interview, and are seen, and our pre-screening process allows that, and hiring supervisors see a breadth of applicants. So that's one of the reasons, and we'll continue to foster that as one of our corporate strategies and our DEI efforts and missions. So a couple of other things I wanted to highlight, less than a 3% turnover rate. That is down from almost 5.5% in the past few quarters. One of the reasons, you might, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've come out of and responded to this large growth in staff to administer $500 million of COVID relief funds, and now we're coming back to, I hate to say it, this overly used term, but the new normal. I would argue, I'm not sure, I don't remember what the old normal was really, what it is, but I say all that to say, we're keeping our folks. So that's, I think, a very big thing and something that we look at as an executive team. A couple of other things related to business services, technology services. We are moving to a new co-location site in another state. So we've got redundancy and multiple ways to get out, which is good business practice. So we can run seamlessly. We started our migration of OneDrive and utilizing several other Microsoft products. And then we safety and security, cybersecurity, we have a phenomenal group of individuals that takes care of that, installing firewalls, keeping us safe, penetration test, vulnerability test, remedied all of the any findings. So we're constantly aware of those things and we monitor those. Just from a facilities perspective, all of our capital needs projects, nearly all of them have been completed on time. And we had a few laggards that are probably explaining some of the variances that Tracy talks about a little bit later. But we've got all of those slated and scheduled for this fiscal year, fiscal 24. And then lastly, our corporate planning and accountability department, who you're going to hear from Kendrick here in just a second for related to the allocation plan. We track all of the available admin for all of the 26, 27, 28 grants that we oversee. Just something to know about that 75%. That will never be 100%, because keeping up with all those 27 grants, the times they roll on and roll off, you'll never get to 100%. So that normally is in the high 70s to low 80s. And we calculate that at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we have a target to hit so that we can actually maximize those. And not on this list, but another thing that the corporation has really done to evolve and capture all of those is we've managed to get a negotiated indirect cost rate with HUD to maximize, make that number even bigger and really recoup all of those costs. Yes?
If 75% of the admin fees are realized, does that mean that you're only serving 75% of the possible 100% of people who could be served?
Not exactly, because every one of those 27, 28 different grants, I'll give you an example, weatherization. There's a whole lot of eligible activities that the Kentucky Housing Corporation doesn't even do, and we wouldn't, so the admin's available and the dollars are there, we don't even do those programs. So, but that's a great question, Kathy. A couple of other last things tying into the Eastern and Western Kentucky, disaster response. On the front end of that, we have a tool out on our website, and I was just talking to Kathy about this a little earlier, but to show individuals in Eastern and particularly Western Kentucky where available housing units were, that's been viewed over 6,500 times, and it's actually been it's real-time information. People can contribute to it and see where units are that have been displaced by disaster. And then we've added to the demographic data in our quarterly reporting, and I'm going to ask you, Sam, to, if you all remember this from the May board meeting, I wanted to just remind everyone what this is. This is some specific demographic information and data for our programs that we administer. Very high level. I'm not going to get into all the nuance of this, but I'll sort of frame it up for you. Across the bottom, you will see the Kentucky Housing Corporation the programs we administer. All under Miss Wendy Smith back there. So we've got all the programs at the bottom, and then the percentage up the left-hand side there. The bar, the solid blue line, is the non-white population from CHAZ data of 13.75%. That is the non-white population in the state of Kentucky, okay? So this dark shaded blue area, you'll see on there represented as program area delta. That is the non-white percentage within the qualified population for every one of those programs. That's why you'll see all the varying different AMIs and all the different nuance here, because we administer several programs that have several different regulations and constraints on who we can serve. So anything that is above the dots represent where we are through the fourth quarter, okay, for the makeup of all the families, the households, or individuals that we serve. Anything that is above this line represents the population that is served being greater than that represented by the state population of non-white individuals. And then even more specific, we've got it narrowed down a little more. Anything that is above these dark shaded lines or in these dark shaded lines means we are either serving at or exceeding the non-white population as a whole there for each of those programs. So you might ask yourself, the one laggard is this TVRA program. I will tell you, the TVRA program is not necessarily the most representative. We administer it for the balance of state, but I think there's maybe 116 counties instead of 118 counties. Several of those are in rural areas where there's not a population of individuals that the program is the population's not there to support that. So we're keeping an eye on that, but bigger picture, we're keeping an eye on all of our programs, and this is something the executive team looks at every quarter.
Housing choice voucher that can only be used by rent assistance, but TVRA is a choice of how much we put into it. It comes out of CDB. What is it?
Comes out of home.
Home.
Yeah.
So if we're not using it, why are we putting it into TVRA? Why
Oh,
not
no,
put
we're
into
using
rates
it.
instead?
What John's pointing out is that the population that we serve appears to not reflect the balance of state
Right.
diverse
I'm
households.
sorry.
Yes.
But that is largely because it's mainly in East Kentucky.
Okay.
It's a good question.
I don't.
No, that's exactly right. No. And with that,
I might ask stupid.
no. With that, I'll entertain any other questions. Again, this is informational. So any other questions from anyone else? Okay.
Mike had to step out, so stepping in for a second. So thank you very much, John. Thank you for that information. We don't need to vote or anything on it, do we?
Information only.
Information only, that's what I thought. Okay, so next we have on the agenda the presentation of Kentucky Housing Corporation allocation plans, actuals for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023.
Hello there.
Kendrick Vonderschmidt.
My name is Kendrick Vonderschmidt. I'm the Managing Director of Corporate Planning and Accountability. Last we spoke, we were, back in May, we presented the fiscal year 24 projected units and allocation of these are program dollars being spent on housing people throughout the state. Now we're looking backwards. The addition to this plan will be these blue bars that you see on the right side of your screen here. These blue bars are supported by information that's on the third page, but we'll keep it at a high level throughout this presentation. If you have any questions, we can delve into it. So we can think of, what did we do this last fiscal year with all of our program dollars? Starting off with our single-family lending programs. As John mentioned, we had a $500 million goal for our single-family lending, and we did $486 million on 2,813 original first mortgages. You look at the far right-hand column and see that our average per first mortgage unit has per mortgage investment has gone up to $172,000, almost $173,000, and then which it continues to rise year for year. Looking to our next line is the Mortgage Credit Certificate Program, which is funded by our bond cap. We had a goal to allocate $178 million, and we allocated out $133 million. The balance there, that the $48 million, will be able to be carried forward as investment next year. We did assist 815 households with those funds at just under $41,000 per unit. And then finally, on our regular mortgage operation, on a goal of $25 million, we put out $19.6 million in our down payment assistance out of our housing assistance fund, for a per unit investment of $7,959. It was during this fiscal year that we switched from investing $75,000 per unit of these down payment assistance to $10,000 per unit, which is what you see on next year's allocation plan. If you look forward to next year, you do see that we have a much smaller goal of a combination of $250 million in single-family mortgage loans and $150 million in our new HRB program, which we recently approved as a board. And a smaller number of total units. It's just over 2,300 units, and then it was being supported by 2,500 DAP loans. With that, that's a reflection of the difference between how our mortgage credit certificate program impacts our bond capital versus how much our this new HRB program impacts our bond cap, and what the market looks like. Just how many loans we think we'll be able to support next year as well. We are still putting money into the single family programs, but we have different anticipations as what next year is when this fiscal year is going to look like at the end of the year. Next, moving down to our homeowner assistance fund. This is a treasury-funded program to keep people in their mortgages, get people current with their mortgages, created out of the pandemic era. We anticipated putting out $9.1 million in investment, and we got $17.2 million out the door. We assisted 1,500 families with those funds at an average a little bit better than what we expected, $11,000 per unit. The program ramped up faster. We had a little bit more backlog we were able to get through, and we anticipate that program to continue running strong next year. Finally, on our counseling, we were right on target. We invested a little under $2,000, or a little over $200,000 in funds, but we got 2,700 units out of that, an average of $75 per unit. Right where we want to be with these programs. And that's a combination of the programs that are funded by HUD, programs that are funded by our homeowner assistance fund, or our home assistance fund here at KHC, and some settlement money. All right. Moving on to home ownership production. This is a section of programs running out of Wendy's Housing Contract Administration Shop, funded by our home grants from the HUD program, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars, and these include our CHOTOs as well. We anticipated allocating $8.8 million, and we allocated $8.3 million in award funds to these programs. Slightly higher than anticipated actual investment of $45,700 per unit. And we got 182 of the 210 unit goal that we wanted to. My understanding is that the main drawback there was in our rehab units and our construction unit in Eastern Kentucky. If you look forward to next year on these programs, 475 is a lot of units, and that's our Rural Housing Trust Fund units that Wendy was speaking about. That's an additional $15 million in funds that we're putting into those areas of the state. And while it will be a challenge to get those units out the door, that's 450 to 75 families housed.
That's the 20 million with 10 million for each. That came out of what what would I have seen it in 2023?
It did not exist in 2023.
Well, it didn't exist, but you got the money from something that already existed.
It was from SAFE funds, that's an acronym for the State Assistance for the Federally Declared Disasters.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes, so
And I
20 million.
approved it.
Yes.
I approved that 20 million.
Yes.
I just knew it came from somewhere else.
All right. Moving on to multifamily, you'll see a significant divergence between, we anticipated getting out $274 million in investment, and we allocated $406 million of investment in multifamily. That is more about the bond deals we closed. We closed significantly more tax-exempt bond projects than we anticipated. You'll see that the construction costs crept up there, $142,000 per unit, where we had about $135,000 per unit goal.
You anticipate 185.
Yeah, we got ahead of that when we put our allocation plan together beginning of last year. That's the anticipation. Yeah, so we do expect a lot of tax-exempt bond projects again next year, and that's where we get that $487,000. That's more tax-exempt bonds than anything else. We do have some of that Rural Housing Trust Fund dollars as well next year. All right, moving to our rental assistance section. This first section is $176 million out the door, right on goal, right as projected as far as our unit investment of $6,400 per unit, and a goal of $27,491. This is our HCD program, our Section 8 vouchers, our projects, and units within those projects throughout the state.
I have a question. In the next thing, it shows 185 million, and up here it shows 177 million for families benefiting, the dollar amount spent in 2024. Of course, it's consistent with the allocation plan. I just don't understand maybe where those numbers are. I mean, it's not a lot of, it is a lot of, you know what I mean, it's not a lot of variance, I just can't explain it to myself. Okay, if you look here, there's 183. And if you look here, it's 177.
Okay, so the difference between the, page 2 is the sources of our funds. We actually take out admin.
Oh, that's it, that's what I wondered.
That's a total there. Okay, now our next section is our emergency housing vouchers. We anticipated spending funds of $449,000 of housing assistance payments. We did get $984,000 out the door, and we are spending about $5,659 per unit on that. I do think that the per unit calculation there, the amount of money versus the amount of units that we projected last May was just a fundamental misunderstanding of how many dollars we're going to get out. And if you look towards next year, we already have 174 of these units. These are very hard vouchers to get rolling. We already have 174 units leased out. We anticipate having more than that next year. We're not going to have 95 next year. We'll have probably closer to a total allotment of 257. But it'll be in line with that $6,000 to $7,000 of investment per unit. Our next program is the ERA2 program. This includes the second round of Healthy at Home eviction relief. This includes the beginning of our court-based eviction program, some funds that we sent out to our PHA partners, to our homeless services partners across the state. All of these programs are wrapped up into 60,600 families that were assisted. Treasury did tell us to spend that money faster than we had anticipated. That's one of the reasons that instead of $159, or we got $100,000 out the door the way we did. Because we spent it on some of those other support, we did get a per unit investment of $1,000 per unit, just to keep people in their homes for a little bit longer during the tail of the pandemic emergency. If you look at next year, we have a significantly narrower program where we're being allowed to use those funds for. We're only projected to put $12,794,000 out the door, and that is mainly going to be our homeless services and our court-based eviction program. And that is also narrows the number of people we're projected to assist to 2,778. All right. Finally, we're going on to homelessness and special needs programs. This first section, this is COC, TBRA, ESG, as John talked about earlier. We did help 8,000 or 8 million. We did put out $9 million of investment on an $8.4 million goal, and assisted 3,300 households with a per unit investment of $2,700. Again, this is a little bit more than what we anticipated on putting out per unit. We're doing more wraparound services than ever before, just helping people that rent payment when we're supporting branches a little bit more than it's ever been before as well. Similar situation with HOPWA, the Persons with AIDS Associated with Housing Solutions. So two things are happening here. First, we had our normal grant came in. Where that $1.3 million investment projection came from. We also got our HOPWA C grant in this past fiscal year. That's why it's about $3 million or $30,000 more. That's why we have a $1.6 million investment in 2023. Because of that, our per unit investment does look a little bit higher at $9,800 per unit, but those are going to taper off over the next 3 years. Our HOPWA C grant and in addition to that, we also have a situation, just like I mentioned with the previous homelessness programs, wraparound services, additional rent subsidies are higher than ever. Finally, looking at our emergency solution grants, the CARES dollar, these are FY21 funds that are still being spent. We did reallocate $125,000, but you'll see we got 3,500 units. We didn't get that out of $125,000. We got that out of the $23 million that we awarded 2 years ago. Okay. You'll see that we do anticipate getting another 1,100 units out of that before it ends at the end of next month, is our current deadline for ESG CARES. Finally, our weatherization and energy efficiency programs. We invested $12.8 million into those programs, $14,700 per unit. A little bit increased construction and labor costs. We did get 870 units of this regular weatherization, regular lighting programs. And then we have this large bipartisan infrastructure legislation. We got a $25 million grant. We awarded $17.8 million of that. and we've already assisted 68 units with that. I didn't do a per unit investment on that. It looked gaudy, because that's money that we're going to keep spending over the next 5 years, possibly 10 years, depending on how DOE manages the program. All in all, if you look at the past fiscal year, we did have higher construction costs, we did have higher per unit costs than we anticipated. We also had a lot of innovative ways that we were able to house units with all the different forms of money that we have had. With that, are there any questions about this large and attempt at comprehensive doc?
Anybody have any questions of Kendra? Just let me say that, I've said it many times, it's unbelievable what the KC staff does. And John, if you would make sure all the staff gets our appreciation from this board, because we do appreciate you all hard work.
Well, Chairman, I'd like to throw this in here. That 2.7% stat of retention is amazing, and it has everything to do with his leadership and the leadership here. And I'd like to put that on record and commending them, because they're sitting in here between three markets, and it's very tough to keep people. And I know John has been in change management, and part of that is actually the communication y'all are putting down towards the people about our mission here. That's got to be something that's actually keeping people here instead of them dispersing other places for better opportunities.
So noted, Barry. That's a very good point. And so we appreciate the staff and the leadership that is here at KFC. You all do a wonderful job. It's always amazing to me to see these figures and see what you actually do.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
I just said that I would be interested over the long haul if the fact that we were able to attract minority employees who are discriminated against so freely in other places helps add to our retention, that we get loyalty simply by hiring people whose options can be very limited outside, not because of their abilities, but because of the structure of hiring. So that might be something to look at. That might be yet another benefit of the way that you attract employees now.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, Tracy, you want to talk to us about the financial update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an informational item, so no action is needed. I'm going to share with you the fourth quarter year-end financials. We'll start with the pro forma statement of net position for year-end. We're going to use navigational aids like we have in the past, so I'm just going to point to some highlights of each of these schedules. Starting with line D, as it's been the case for years, total assets continue to shrink as we allow loans to pay off in the bond portfolio. These loans are being replaced by new loans and Ginnie Mae pools that are off the books. Going back up to line A, total program purpose assets, which are mostly the bond portfolio, decreased by $21 million and were replaced by cash in line D. Dropping down to liabilities, line E, there's a $20 million decrease in debt outstanding for program purpose assets, which corresponds with a decrease in assets. Line F, interest payable increased by $1.4 million. This is variable rate bonds we have, and we are watching those bonds. Going down to line L, you can see the mark-to-market on the investment portfolio increased by $5.4 million. That's our continued markdown of our investments. We plan to hold these investments to maturity, so that's just a paper markdown, no real concern there. So on line N, you'll see the overall net position at year end improved by $20 million. I'd like to note at the very bottom, line N and O, a very promising note for our servicing portfolio. It increased $235 million from 2022 to June 30, 2023. This represents a slowdown in prepayments, but also very decent production numbers given the current market. So our servicing for others portfolio ended the year at $2.7 billion. I'm going to move on to the next chart to look at our whole servicing portfolio, both on the books and servicing for others. This is fondly known as Jim's black and red chart. Not sure it'll always stay those colors in the future. But someone in the room really wanted to point out, normally we would have this chart through June 30 to show our servicing portfolio. The black is the bonds we have, and the red is servicing for others. But someone in the room would like to emphasize that as of yesterday, under his tenure as CFO here at KHC, our servicing portfolio hit $3.5 billion. So very big milestone. All right, Sam, we'll go to the next one. So this is our pro forma income statement for year end. We'll start with line A. Although investments have shrunk, the yield on those investments has increased a bit by about $1 million. Line B is the interest expense, and this includes the interest expense on our variable rate debt. It has gone up even though the liability has not gone up. Overall interest expense increased by $1.2 million. Most notably is line D, our gain on sale of loans. Went from $15.4 million last year down to $8.4 million this year. Given the current interest rate environment, there's just not a lot of investor appetite. We've spent the last 10, 12 years selling our loans in the secondary market. Now with the interest rates being higher, the demand's just not there. So the gain we've so greatly been rewarded with over the last several years is not as great as it has been in the past. You'll see in the executive committee report out, we are kind of pivoting and looking to issue mortgage revenue bonds as a way to fund our mortgages. So you'll hear more about that in a little bit. Line H, you'll see an increase in G&A expenses of $5 million. This is a little bit of an anomaly. In 2021, we booked our pension liability as we chose to exit the pension. When we actually paid the pension in 2022, we had to make an adjustment, about $4.1 million to correct the accrued pension liability because the bill came in about $4.1 million less than what we had booked. So that created a negative expense in 2022 and reduced the G&A by about $5 million. So the $20 million G&A expense is more accurate. Line O, change in net position, which is our net income for the year, is $20 million compared to $25 billion in 2022. Again, that represents the less gains we had on sales of loans. Lastly, line Q, we're ending the year with $450 million net position. Given the current market conditions in single-family originations, we're still producing loans to net profit, so we're still in a pretty good position there. The next statement is our cash flow pro forma. I'll just note two areas on here. Line B, the significant decrease in the non-capital financing activity is almost entirely the pension payment in 2022 versus not having that in 2023. And then down below in lines H, I, and J, all of these are single-family metrics. We're trailing from prior year production, just given the current rate environment. The next two schedules relate to our operating budget. The first one is our operating fee income, budget versus actual. I'll highlight a couple areas here. Line A is our rental assistance fee income. That is $500,000 favorable to budget, mostly because we added additional vouchers. I think we did some more MRR reviews in our PDCA program, which resulted in more fee income. In line, yes.
Is it also because you got closer to the 100% of spending, so you could collect more fees than you anticipated? Just asking. I mean, we saw 75% of fees could be different, but
I
maybe in
honestly
the
don't
Section 8 program, you get closer to 85 or something like that.
I believe our fee income on the Section 8 program is based on number of vouchers used, so you could be right there.
Yeah, so it might mean, congratulations, Wendy. Sorry, Wendy, I like to congratulate people. You know, that's a very important program. Thank you.
Line E, temporary COVID funds, that's 6.5 million favorable to budget. That represents the wind down of HHERF. When we did the budget last year, you see this on this slide and the next slide. It's very difficult, it has been difficult the last several years to project what programs we'll have or what programs we won't have. So we've had programs added in the middle of the year, programs sunset in the middle of the year, and it was our best estimate at the time to put the budget together. The HHF program did sunset. For the most part, we're still doing a small component of it halfway through this year. Going down to line G, this is loan servicing fee income, which is 1.3 million favorable to budget. During COVID, we had a lot of loans in COVID forbearance, and we weren't getting the servicing fees on those. A lot of those, most of those made it through the loss mitigation and claims process this year, and so we got a bunch of back fees owed to us. So this was kind of a one-time thing. We don't anticipate that happening in fiscal 24, as most of those loans have made it through the claims process. Line H, rental production, fee income was 2.3 million favorable budget. This is our multifamily area. As was emphasized in prior presentations, we closed more multifamily deals, which resulted in more fee income than projected. Line P, overall, we are 2.5 million favorable to budget for the fiscal year. So a good report up there. The last slide I have here is our operating expenditures, budget to actual for year end. So as I said, we wound down the HHERF program. That is a grant program, so we have to have expenditures to have the fee income. So there's a similar decrease in expenditures to match the HHERF decrease of revenue. Dropping down to the very bottom, line CC, our actual year-to-date total of 40.3 million is 6 million favorable to budget, and that represents a lot of that HHERF that we didn't spend or receive. Going back up to the top, Sam, I'm gonna make you crazy. Line C, contractor temps, 2.5 million favorable to budget. That includes HHRF, and then we had a different staffing plan when we put the budget together for our HOPE program, so we didn't utilize some contractors there where we thought we would. Line F, computer operations, this is 128,000 unfavorable to budget. We had a project that was supposed to be completed in fiscal 22 that ended in fiscal 23, so expenses rolled over. Line G, foreclosure costs and release fees, 167,000 favorable budget. We anticipated some loans coming out of forbearance, COVID forbearance, reach foreclosure sooner than they have, so we didn't spend as much there. Occupancy expenses, 140,000 favorable to budget. We have 2 building projects that are now, they've now been moved to fiscal 24, an elevator and some other heat elements. Lines I and J, printing and public information and office supplies. Those are both favorable due to the HHRF wind down. Employee development in line L, 170,000 favorable to budget. There are a lot of trainings budgeted for by staff that weren't attended because some other initiatives came up during the year, mostly related to disaster recovery, so they got sidetracked. Line O, liquidation shortfall. This is favorable to budget because it's a function of prepayments. The payoffs have slowed down significantly during the year, so the cost associated with that has also decreased. Lastly, line P, training for partners and clients, 218,000 favorable to budget, mostly related to a contract we have for our home art funds that looks like it'll be utilized more in fiscal 24 than 23. So overall, we had a pretty good year. We weathered a few storms. We are currently being audited, so we will have our audited financials presented to the Finance Committee next month. Yes.
Just asking, equipment repair and rental, very different. Did you already go over that? And
I don't think I picked up that one, but that's likely over budget.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
purchased a corporate van.
I thought there was something. I just wanted to know what. I mean, it was
We
clear
had-
it was something.
We had a van that was being used by staff that wasn't in great shape, it was older, and we were actually reimbursing more mileage than we wanted to, so we went ahead with the purchase of the new van. Yep. Does anybody else have any questions?
Tracy, it's a wonderful job. We appreciate your hard work and your effort. And it's amazing that you're over $3 billion in services. So thank you again.
We had to stretch it till August to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sam, you need some signatory authority, right?
Yes, sir, thank you. Thank you to the members of the board. So the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation last approved updates to the KHC Signatory Authority on February 23rd, 2023. This resolution updates the language in the Signatory Authority document to reflect changes effective tomorrow in the corporation's executive management. So as many of you know, Jim Stadler, our long-serving CFO, is going to be stepping back, and Tracy Thurston will be appointed as the new CFO. And so this document reflects that change. One thing to note is that we're going to keep Jim's name on the document in order to ensure that there's a smooth transition. So some of the documentation that we get from some of the banks may not be updated as quickly to reflect that. So that's the reason that we're doing that. The KHC staff recommends approval of this, approval by the Board of Directors of this resolution updating the corporation's signatory authority.
Any members have any questions of Sam? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion by Kathy, second by Holly. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay. Tracy, you're going to come back up and talk about signatory authority for the Ginnie Mae Mortgage Association.
Yes, thank you. Very similar to the last resolution. We need to update our signatory authority with the staffing changes with Ginnie Mae. So I'll just read through this real quick. To more effectively fulfill the mission of Kentucky Housing Corporation of providing safe and affordable housing opportunities, KHC participates in Ginnie Mae mortgage-backed security program. Pursuant to the guidelines of the program, KHC is required to adopt and execute HUD Form 11702, Resolution of Board of Directors and Certificate of Authorized Signatures, designating certain individuals as having authority to sign certain documents required by Ginnie Mae. Due to staff turnover, the resolution must be updated. It was last updated in the board meeting on August 27, 2020. KHC staff seeks adoption of the form, and staff recommends approval.
Any members have any questions of Tracy in regard to this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, report action to the executive committee meeting held July 27th. I'm going to turn that over to Sam to really discuss that.
So the Executive Committee of the Board of Directors held a meeting virtually on Thursday, July 27, 2023 at 2 p.m. At that meeting, the Executive Committee considered and approved 4 resolutions. Resolution number 38 approved the adoption of an updated administrative plan for the rental assistance programs. The changes included in this plan related to increasing the flexibility of the rent reasonableness standard, updating the subsidy standards, and increasing the amount of time allowed to issue a voucher. The goal of these changes was to increase flexibility to allow more eligible applicants to obtain housing assistance under the program and to give them more time to do so. Resolution number 39 authorized the creation of a new general indenture or trust for single-family bond issuance. This new indenture provides greater flexibility with respect to eligible assets, fewer restrictions, more streamlined accounting, and simpler compliance requirements. Resolution number 40 authorized the issuance of 2023 Series A housing revenue bonds in an amount of up to $100 million. The purpose of this bond issuance was to finance low to moderate income mortgage loans. The tax-exempt bond issuance allows KHC to offer lower rates on its loans than it might otherwise be available in the market, which in turn allows us to serve residents of Kentucky who may not otherwise qualify for a home loan in this current market. Resolution number 41 approved a cost of living increase of 3% for the executive director effective July 1, which mirrors the 3% cost of living increase other KHC staff received. This concludes the report of the executive committee of the board of directors.
Anybody have any questions? This was necessary in order to get these done in a timely manner. Anybody have any questions of? Yes, Kate?
Can I send the changes to the admin plan for Section 8?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn this over to Winston to talk about informational items. And Winston, I just want you to know that I had so many compliments on the conference and the work that KC did. A lot of people came up to me that I didn't even know and talked about what a wonderful conference it was. So congratulations to you and your people for putting on such a wonderful conference. And, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, Mike, thank you very much, and that's a good segue into the first sort of next item that we have on the business or report on. As most of you all know or recall, last week we held the Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference, which KHC puts on each year, or at least we have the last 2 years, and then we were void for a couple of years because of the pandemic. But there's been a tradition of doing that each year for several years. And Molly,
She'll be right back.
Molly and her staff, where did you go?
She'll be right back, she said.
Oh, okay.
She's throwing another conference.
Molly and Tate, who's the Director of Communications and Marketing for Kentucky Housing Corporation, hopefully will be back with us in a minute, is going to give us a brief summary of that conference. And Molly, take it.
Sorry about that.
Molly, I was just saying what a wonderful job you all did. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm Molly Tate, and I'm the Managing Director of Communications and Marketing Services. And as many of you guys know, Kentucky Housing Corporation hosted the Kentucky Affordable Housing Conference last week in Lexington in the newly renovated Central Bank Center. Oh, sorry, I was running. I thought there was a problem with our stream. This is my first time handling it alone, and I wanted to make sure we had a recording. Highlights for the venue. It was newly renovated, and everyone loved the airiness of it. We had it at the Galt House previously, and everyone just thought that the venue was just kind of added a special touch. The food was delicious, the speakers were fantastic, and we added an evening event this year at Let's Live, which is right behind the convention center. And that was just a really nice way for everyone to network and just kind of relax. It was a wonderful event that exceeded our expectations, and we're thankful to everyone, the team, all of the support that we received. In all, we had 631 people register for the conference, and we had 588 people attend, which is a 93% check-in rate. And for comparison, last year we had 500 people register, and we had about 450 people attend, which was fantastic for us last year. Coming off of COVID, we had no idea what to expect, and we were just ecstatic with that last year. And then coming into this year, we were like, if we can get 500, that would be fantastic. And then our numbers kept growing. We were starting to stress out, but we were just so thrilled with the numbers. And we had an 8% invitee conversion rate. So for you numbers nerds, that means 8% of the people we invited registered and attended. And that's, the goal is 5%. And for most people who plan events, a unicorn is considered 11%. So the registration software company was just ecstatic with what we had done. They thought that we were bordering on magical level. And so they deal with a lot of national and international clients, and they just couldn't even believe that we had gotten an 8.3% invitee conversion rate. So we really surpassed all of our expectations, all of their expectations, and we really think it was because it was a team effort. And our guests included 4 board members, Bruce Brown, Mike Denham, Barry Knopfsinger presented, and PG Peoples came to the award ceremony. And we appreciate you guys all coming out to support us. Bruce Brown was there for the pre-conference training. You guys all engaged. It was fantastic. We appreciate you guys coming out to support our staff, to learn more about the work that Kentucky Housing does and our partners do. And as is customary, we invited local, state, and national elected officials. We typically invite our senators, like Senator Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, Representative Brett Guthrie, Morgan McGarvey, Thomas Massey, Hal Rogers, Andy Barr, and James Comer, but unfortunately they were unable to attend. Governor Beshear and Linda Mayor Gordon each gave remarks there, and that was just kind of like the cherry on the sundae of the event. People really enjoyed having them there. Many of our partners were thrilled to hear from them, and they really felt like that added gravity, especially because our theme this year was Rebuilding Kentucky, and we really focused on the disaster recovery, and so they both spoke to that theme, and so it really just kind of tied in the speakers' messages and what they added to that, so it really was very complimentary, and it was great. The crowd included 50 organizations spanning the state, and then representatives from West Virginia and Ohio, and that doesn't even include the more than 100 people who attended our 3 pre-conference trainings on Tuesday and Wednesday. So again, we just had so many people attend and so much support. We had 36 exhibitors and 37 sponsors, including 3 presenting sponsors, which we think was a record. And we raised more than $143,000 to defray conference operating costs, which was great for us. We set the bar high this year, but we really catered to our presenting sponsors, and we received great feedback. And so we think that they will come back next year, so that's great. The themes this year the theme was Rising to the Challenge, Building a Stronger Kentucky. And in keeping with that theme, we honored 7 organizations that helped rebuild Eastern and Western Kentucky at our award ceremony, and discussed in our sessions ways that we can improve housing in Kentucky now and in the future. And our 3 keynote speakers all delivered complimentary messages from different perspectives. So our 3 keynote speakers were Martin Moto, who's the CEO and founder of SoLaw Impact. He is a for-profit developer who specifically works in central Los Angeles. And he really spoke to our developers there. He focuses on communities of color, and he kind of inspired some of our for-profit developers to kind of think outside the box, and so that really spoke to them, and they really loved that. We got a lot of great feedback on him. He was great to work with, and he knew the other 2 speakers, so he kicked it off, and he referenced them in his discussion, and so that really led well into their talks. And then Shane Phillips recently published The Affordable City, which is a book that examines housing policy in Los Angeles, and he outlines 55 strategies for improving affordability and housing stability. And so he spoke at our lunch on Thursday, which was the first day, and we gave away his book as one of the conference gifts. So he signed and discussed his work at the conference, and then he stuck around for the duration of the conference. So that gave a lot of the attendees the opportunity to speak with him and discuss his work. And then on Friday morning, Greg Colburn, who was kind of the most coveted speaker, He is a professor of real estate. He's also spoken in Louisville. And he discusses areas of housing policy, housing markets, and housing affordability. And he wrote, "Homelessness is a housing problem." He's kind of very hot in the housing supply gap market right now. He's been on NPR. He's been, I think
Many podcasts.
Yes.
Many podcasts.
I was gonna say, I think that he was on something with the president, right?
Oh, I'm not sure. Very possibly.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Something he's been very prominent lately. But anyway, he kind of capped off our speaking circuit, and he also referenced what everybody else had said. So everybody kind of reinforced the same message. They said Kentucky has a housing shortage, and we can face a housing crisis in 10 to 15 years without intervention. And this is what happened in areas like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Austin. But Kentucky is taking the necessary steps to assess its housing needs, to identify gaps, and to develop a plan to address the shortages and to look for innovative solutions. And then along with the plenary speakers, the conference had speakers from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, local and state government, housing partners, lenders, developers, and national recovery and environmental review experts. So, and then closing out the conference, we honored 3 individuals who had worked to strengthen affordable housing opportunities for Kentuckians throughout their careers. So, William Summers, who is the former board chair here, he got the May Street Kid Award. And then Jim Statler got our Lynn Llewellyn Innovation Award, which we launched last year. And then Myron Agnew, who worked for Community Ventures for over 20 years, he got our Dorothy J. Williams Lifetime Achievement Award. And his daughter, who's followed in his footsteps, accepted the honor in his stead, because we honored it to him posthumously. So we're going to survey all of the attendees next week. And we're also going to send out an email to all of the attendees, and we'll also send it to all of you guys with a link to all of the presentations and to all of the videos, because we recorded all of the sessions. So you guys can see not only the award ceremony and all of the speeches, but also recordings of all of the sessions. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Anybody have any questions of Molly?
That was a lot of information.
Molly, job well done.
Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Well, Bruce, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to share my conference experience. As you know, you were there, you drove down, and I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for driving down there and getting the conference opened and bringing your lovely wife with you. Doris Winston, you're the rudder of the ship, I guess. So I want to thank you for the invitation and getting the time. Molly, you had a good training session with Kelly Reynolds on weatherization. So you and she both need to be complimented. I mean Wendy, I'm sorry, Wendy. Molly, I want to thank you because you were up every morning, the first one up and the last one to leave each day. And when I would come down the steps, she'd stick me where I needed to go. And when I got about halfway got to where I needed to go, my friend John would come over to get me and take me to the coffee place and help me get those 3 days, John, and I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. But it's one of the best conferences I've ever attended. The food was good and the camaraderie, and I met people, Mr. Chairman, out in the field that work from home, and they're so dedicated and so good to be an asset to this organization. I saw Sam a couple of times, but he was doing his lawyerly thing. So at any rate, Winston, thank you so much for your invitation, and thank the staff that's here because you did an excellent job, and you really helped me get through it. And I'm new, so I learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, Bruce, thank you for being there, and thank everyone that was there, and we appreciate the moral support. Go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to say before I forget it about another member that was there, Barry was there, and he was the presenter. And he did an excellent job, Barry, and I learned things that I didn't know about manufactured housing, and I appreciate you sharing the time with me to teach me and learn me up good.
Well, that's when we get record numbers.
Thank you, Winston, I'm sorry.
No, thank you for your comments, we appreciate it. And not to belabor the point, but I do want to thank not only Molly, but all of her team and all the people from Kentucky Housing Corporation and Barry and others that were there and participated in the program. It was an excellent program. We have one final item, Mr. Chairman, that we hadn't covered earlier. And the final item we wish to place before the board today is actually a resolution honoring James F. Statler for his service and leadership at the Kentucky Housing Corporation and his commitment to the cause of affordable housing. We intentionally left this item off the agenda because of a fear that James Statler, that is Jim, as we know him, would object and be a troublemaker to our attempts to honor him. He has a little bit of a track record of that with me, and so we decided to keep it off the agenda and put it on the agenda here at the end of the meeting. But many of you who have worked with Jim longer than I have, many of you have, but I believe that anyone who has observed Jim at work and in action for even a very limited time appreciates the contributions that he's made to Kentucky Housing Corporation and the leadership that he's provided over the years. We've been blessed, thank you, to have the leadership and wisdom and experience of Jim for the past 11 to 12 years as CFO. Last week, as has been mentioned here briefly before, Jim was honored by being named the second recipient of the Lynn Llewellyn Innovation Award. And during that award ceremony, his accomplishments and achievements were detailed at great length, having been crafted by the staff that know him firsthand and who know his contributions that he has made, and also who love and admire him. That presentation and those recitation of those accomplishments will be included in this link, which Molly has made reference to, that each of you all will receive in an email. And if you have the time and the inclination to take that in along with any of the other program, we encourage you to do that. I'm not going to repeat all of those accomplishments here today, particularly given the hour. We'll be here for quite a while, and I won't do that. But I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that the transcript of that presentation be included as an exhibit to the minutes today and in support of the resolutions that we're presenting. Suffice it to say that Jim's contributions have been enormous and greatly appreciated. And as we all know, while he will be leaving us as CFO at the end of today and placing those responsibilities in the very capable hands of Tracy Thurston, which we're happy to have, you all know Jim is going to be continuing on as an advisor and consultant to us for the foreseeable future. So Jim's not leaving us, he's just changing his status with the corporation. So with that having been said, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to have our General Counsel, Sam, read the resolution and we're to take action.
Resolution number 50, series of 2023, a resolution recognizing James F. Statler for his service and leadership at Kentucky Housing Corporation and for his commitment to the cause of affordable housing in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Whereas James F. Statler declared his intent to step down as Chief Financial Officer from Kentucky Housing Corporation on August 31st, 2023, and whereas James F. Statler has been employed by Kentucky Housing Corporation from September 6, 2011 until August 31st, 2023. And And whereas James F. Statler's knowledge and expertise have been valued contributions to the deliberations of the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation and the development of Kentucky Housing Corporation programs and staff. And whereas James F. Statler, through his leadership at Kentucky Housing Corporation, has been instrumental in creating the position that Kentucky Housing Corporation holds as one of the leading state housing finance agencies in the nation. And whereas the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation desires to recognize James F. Statler for his commitment to the furtherance of affordable housing as a major quality of life issue for all Kentuckians. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation does hereby express its deepest appreciation for the service and outstanding contributions by James F. Statler to the cause of affordable housing, to Kentucky Housing Corporation, and to the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
I'd like to make a couple of comments if I could. First of all, the accolades, and as long as they were, are humbling and the length maybe almost embarrassing, but it's been a great ride. The support that I have gotten from the board, from the chairman of the board, this board, the board that was here when I got here, all of the board members that have come and gone have been absolutely 100% supportive of the various initiatives that we as a collectively, as management team, have put out there and accomplished. And William Summers called me the other day because he wanted to tell me he couldn't come to the event on Tuesday afternoon. And he said that, and I recounted something that I had said, maybe, I think the third year I was here, that it was the first time that the light at the end of the tunnel, I was convinced, was indeed daylight and not that of an oncoming freight train. Things were a little dire, but collectively, and I congratulate the board, this one, the prior boards. I obviously congratulate all those folks who have helped me and let me do the things that I wanted to do and hopefully help the organization. I only got a little pushback from one person every once in a while about certain things, but you know, we worked together 100% as a very well-oiled machine and a super team, and for that I congratulate you all, those all, and us. And so I leave the position in capable hands. I have no doubts whatsoever that we will continue as an organization to continue to grow and prosper and serve the people of the Commonwealth. So congratulations to us all. Thank
you. A motion, I move, and a second and a vote for the resolution.
Okay, yeah. Kathy, so you make the motion?
No, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Jim, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I want to say that watching you, I've learned a lot in regard to finance, so thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Okay.
I will say, as you all hopefully know, there will be a reception immediately after here with staff that may be on site that joining us. So I'm not sure what the size of that crowd will be, but I think there's cake and punch to come for those that can stick around.
Listen, thank you. Very appropriate motion. And Jim, we wish you the best. There any items from the board? Any board member want to bring up anything today? Okay. Anything else?
Nothing from me.
Okay, good. Okay. With that, we'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Thank you all so much for coming. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Yes, very good.
It wasn't slow, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. You did a nice job.
I did a terrible job.
No, you
Next
did.
time I'll be slower.
No, you did a great job. Is the cake and punch?
It's right back there in the corner. Yep.
And are we going back there, or, so, what, we should invite people to come back there? In the big room back here?
Yeah, in the back.
Okay. If I could have your attention, your attention 1 minute. The cake and the punch is in the large conference room in the back. So you can get there going through this door here or that door over there. Yeah, you want to get some ready?
It was a terrible job, and you know it.
Nice job.